The story begins on an ordinary Saturday morning in a quiet suburban neighborhood when the HOA decided they were going to flex their so-called authority. My wife and I had been living peacefully in our home for years, minding our own business, paying our dues, and following all reasonable community rules. But this particular HOA was different. They had a reputation for power tripping, sending out fines for the most ridiculous reasons, and treating homeowners like subjects in their own little kingdom. That morning, I was out back working on a small woodworking project in the garage while my wife was preparing to head out for her shift. She was in uniform, but since she always drove her personal car before changing into her patrol vehicle, nobody ever really knew what she did for a living. To the HOA, she was just another resident they could push around. Out of nowhere, I saw an HOA board member storm up to our yard, shouting about how we had a supposed violation. According to them, our garbage bin had been left visible on the side of the house, something that disrupted the neighborhood's beauty. My wife calmly explained that she had just wheeled it out because she was heading to work and didn't want to forget later. But the HOA rep wasn't interested in explanations. He pulled out his phone and smugly said, "If you don't comply immediately, I'll have the cops here in 10 minutes." My wife raised an eyebrow, but she stayed quiet. She didn't want to escalate things, and honestly, we both thought he was bluffing. But sure enough, less than 15 minutes later, two patrol cars pulled up in front of our driveway, lights flashing. Neighbors started peeking out their windows, some even recording with their phones, eager to see the spectacle. The HOA president strutted around like he had just won a war, pointing at us and telling the officers that my wife was a problem homeowner refusing to follow community rules. He kept saying things like, "This kind of behavior can't be tolerated in my neighborhood." One officer turned to my wife and asked for her ID. At that point, she finally decided enough was enough. Without a word, she calmly reached into her bag, pulled out her sheriff's badge, and presented it. The entire street fell silent. The HOA president froze, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The two officers immediately snapped to attention, addressing her with respect. "Sheriff," one of them said, "we had no idea. We were just responding to a call." She gave them a reassuring smile and said, "No worries, officers, you're just doing your job, but it looks like someone here wasted county resources for a personal grudge." That's when she turned to the HOA president. "You do realize filing false police reports is a criminal offense, right? And that tying up law enforcement for your personal vendettas puts real emergencies at risk." His face went pale, and suddenly his arrogance disappeared. He tried to stammer out an excuse, saying he thought he was enforcing community rules, but my wife wasn't having it. She told him straight, "You don't get to use the police as your personal henchmen. Next time you want to call in a complaint, make sure it's worth our time, or you'll be the one in cuffs." The officers nodded in agreement and left, clearly amused at the entire situation. As they drove off, my wife turned to the HOA president one last time and said, "By the way, consider this your official warning. Try a stunt like this again, and you'll be dealing with me on duty." He could barely mumble a reply before scurrying off down the street, humiliated. Word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. By evening, everyone knew what had happened, and the once intimidating HOA president was now the laughingstock of the community. Residents who had been bullied for years suddenly felt empowered, knowing the sheriff herself lived right among them. From that day forward, the HOA's harassment stopped cold. No more bogus fines, no more threats, no more intimidation. They finally realized they had messed with the wrong family. And as for my wife, she went right back to her normal routine, calm and professional as always. But everyone in the neighborhood knew now. If you crossed her, you weren't just dealing with another homeowner, you were dealing with the county sheriff herself. And the HOA never dared call the cops on us again.